Hi, this is Steve Rutledge, your English teacher, and this is a presentation on how to do standard journals. After watching this presentation, you should know exactly how to write standard journal. So for standard journals, the first thing you get is something like this. It's actually Journal 1. In this case, this is taken from a previous semester where we did the topic of Stephen Consalvi. He was a young man who jumped on the Philadelphia Phillies baseball field and was tased by a police officer. So typically what you see in a journal is maybe some background information. It's good, simple information. You can use it in your paper. And then what you have are a list of links. And these sometimes are links to videos. We'll actually watch one of these. And also 1, 2, or 3 articles. I try to give you about an hour or two's worth of material. And so your first job with journals is to read through them, watch the videos, and then you're going to write a standard response. If I were the student, typically what I would do is I'd click on the links, and then up would pop, in this case, what is an article and a video. The next connecting link brings up what actually is Stephen Consalvi being tased. Here's a little video of the event. This is a fan who took this video from her phone, and you'll see Stephen Consalvi. There he is in red. He's running around. And you'll see the police officers begin to chase him. The fans seem to actually be enjoying it. And oh, there he goes down with the taser. And so this third link actually brings up an article, and you would need to go ahead and read through that. There it is right here, all the text. Not too tough. So as you can see, your first job with the journal, to read through the background, watch this little short video and read the accompanying article, watch this second video, and then read this third article. And then your assignment would be to write a standard journal in response. And that's what I'm going to spend most of my time talking to you about, how to write these standard journals. It's a very specific format. You have to follow it very carefully, so stick with me. Once you have watched the videos and read the articles for that particular journal, your job is to write a standard journal. And so what I'm going to show you in these next few minutes is how to write a standard journal response. So a finished product of a standard journal would look like this. First, it has what's called a standard heading. It's got the name of the student, title of what journal it is. Your topic will be different. It has the date, it has a title, and then it has 4 different sections. Section 1, Section 2, Section 3, and Section 4. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you step by step through the process of how you can produce a journal that looks exactly like what you see here up on your screen. Remember, you want to follow this exactly, so pay close attention. Well, let's first talk about why to do journals in the first place. Think about it this way. Believe it or not, writing your paper begins right now. Okay? While you are reading and discussing the current topic with your fellow students. Think of it this way. It's like cooking. Cooking doesn't start when you light the stove and put the ingredients in the pan. It actually starts when you go to the store and get the ingredients. After all, no ingredients would mean you have nothing to cook with. All right, just like this picture here. Cooking doesn't start with the pizza. It actually starts with gathering the ingredients for the pizza. So creating a journal starts with reading the background information, watching the videos, reading the articles. That's gathering the ingredients, not for a pizza, but for a paper. So the standard journals are actually really important. They're the chance you have to get everything you need so that when the paper writing time comes, you got everything set. So what is a standard journal? Well, I've already told you that it has 4 parts to it. First, section 1 of the journal. This section asks you to briefly describe all the videos and articles you were asked to read for that particular journal. With this Consalvi example I showed you at the very beginning, I asked you to take a look at, let's count them together, 1, 2, 3 different videos and articles. So you ought to mention, if you were doing a journal for this topic, you should mention in section 1 3 different journals and articles. Let's show you what that looks like. For today's journal, I watched 2 videos of Stephen Consalvi being tased. One video was from a news show, and it had a short article with it that talked about how dumb Stephen was being. The second video was shot by a fan using a cell phone. Finally, I read an article that discussed how dangerous it can be to tase someone. So for section 1, it's not tough. You just need to mention specifically each article and each video. The only way really to lose points in section 1 is not to mention one of the articles or videos, and just give me enough details to convince me, all right, right here, try to convince me that you in fact have looked and read everything. At least show me that you at least opened it up and looked at it. Section 2. This section is the heart of everything we do together in English 099. It's where you write a pies paragraph. Okay, pies. That word is spelled out P-I-E-S, right? There it is right here. Pies. P-I-E-S. A pies paragraph is a paragraph that has P-I-E-S in it. And I'm going to explain what each of those mean. The first part of the paragraph should make a point. Well, hopefully after watching the videos of Stephen being tased and reading the articles, hopefully some point occurs to you that you want to make about what you saw and what you read. For example, if I were writing from Journal 1 about Stephen Consalvi, I might say, here's my point, Stephen Consalvi looks like a harmless prankster who delights the crowd with his hilarious 2-minute run. That's a point I could make, and that's the first thing you want to do in your pies paragraph. Make some point you want to make from what you saw and read about the topic we're discussing in the particular journal. All right, once you make your point, you then want to this is the I in pies, you want to insert some sort of detail or quote from at least one of the videos or articles you viewed. Hey, anybody can make a point, all right? What makes you, shows that you're educated is your ability to insert something to support your point from the different articles and videos you're doing. And really, that's all college writing is, making points and supporting those points. Well, most of what college writing is. Okay, for example, to support my point that neither the players or the crowd seem to feel threatened by Stephen, I might add a quote or detail from one of the videos. For example, in the YouTube video of the tasing posted by a fan who was there, you can clearly see the first baseman laughing into his glove. And someone nearby in the stands is yelling, "Look, he's laughing into his glove." Like me, the crowd and players seem to look at Consalvi like a harmless prankster. All right, so that would support my point, wouldn't it? If my point is Stephen looks like a harmless prankster who delights the crowd, well, again, I got to pick something out from what I saw and read to support that, and I could pull out this idea that the first baseman's laughing into his glove, and that someone behind him says, quote, he's laughing into his glove. And by the way, if you look back in the videos, you can see where the first baseman, can you make that out, where he is actually laughing into his glove, and somebody behind him is saying, hey, he's laughing into his glove. Okay, so again, I'm using this insert from the video, this detail from the video and the quote from the person in the background to support my point that, hey, the players don't look threatened. I mean, do they look threatened here to you? They don't look threatened to me. So back to our pies paragraph. Again, you are going to make a point, then you are going to insert some detail to support that point, and finally you have to explain the point. And this is the most challenging part of a pies paragraph, is figuring out something that will help explain how your details support your point. For example, there's there's really an infinite amount of ways you can explain something. I'm just going to give you 4 or so right here. One thing you could do to explain in a pies paragraph is to make a connection using like or as. That's called a simile. For example, I could say this: the crowd is all laughing and treating Consalvi as if he were running around in the giant hot dog costume you sometimes see at sporting events. Consalvi seems much more like, there's your simile, right, like a mascot than a terrorist. So again, one thing I could do for this explanation part of the paragraph is add a simile. Another thing I can do, and by the way, you can do more than one thing in explanation, but another thing I could do is I could connect to a personal experience. For example, I could write, seeing Stephen Consalvi whooping around, I just felt like I was watching one of my friends from high school just having fun. He reminds me of my friend Bill Erickson, who walked across the graduation stage juggling 3 balls in the air. Was it out of place? Yeah, but the crowd loved it, just like they love Consalvi. So, again, a second way to explain is to connect to a personal experience. A third way you can explain is by connecting to something else you've heard, read, or seen. For example, I remember, because I'm an old guy, look how old I look right there. I remember clear back in 1984 when the Illini football team went to the Rose Bowl, and somebody made this halftime prank. And so I thought, to me, that kind of helps explain what I'm trying to say about Consalvi. So I'm going to connect back to that, and here's what I might write. Consalvi's stunt reminds me of Caltech, a university in California, that pranked the Rose Bowl in 1984, when none other than the University of Illinois was getting crushed by UCLA. At one time in the game, the Caltech nerds used intricate rewiring to alter the scoreboard from UCLA 38, Illinois 9 to Caltech 38, MIT 9, MIT being a rival nerd university. According to one account, even the mayor of Pasadena, where the Rose Bowl is played, complimented the Caltech kids. So sometimes people like pranks like Consalvi's and these kids back in 1984. Do you see how there I'm actually making a connection to something else? It was an event that had happened. I made a connection to it. Other things you can connect back to would be movies, books you've read, articles you've read, facts you know. So there's lots of different ways to explain. Sometimes connecting to something else is one way to do it. Finally, a fourth way you can do explanation is sometimes you could just pick out a key word from a quote and expound about it. And here's kind of how I added some explanation here. I could say, notice the baseball player is laughing into his glove. It's as if the player knows he is supposed to be serious about someone running onto the field, but he can't help but laugh at how ridiculous Consalvi looks and how he's outwitting the slow security guards. So I've just shown you 4 different ways you can do the explanation part of a pies paragraph. You can add a simile, say it's like or as something. You could connect to a personal experience, something it reminds you of from your own life. You could connect to a movie or a book or a current event or something else it reminds you of. That's a nice way of explaining. Or 4, you could just pick out a specific detail or a word or something from the quote and just kind of expound on that a little bit, explain a little more how that helps prove your point. All right, finally. Oh, I got a little typo there. I guess even I need to look back at what I write, huh? Okay, finally, the S in pies stands for summarize. Finish the paragraph by summarizing your main point, which should be the same as your topic sentence. For example, if I were writing this pies paragraph about Consalvi, I might say, so, I understand the guards might have seen Consalvi as a threat, but to me and tens of thousands of others, he was the highlight of the game. So that is section 2 of the journals, is writing this pies paragraph, P-I-E-S, point, make a point, insert some quote or detail from the readings or the videos, explain, add something extra like a simile, personal experience, outside connection, or expound upon a specific detail or word in the quote. And then finally, in the last sentence of the paragraph, summarize it. Repeat your main point. More about this later. I'll show you an actual example of pies paragraph, and I think that'll make it clearer. Okay, section 3 of the pies paragraph. Here you need to choose 4. Now, if you want full credit, boop, 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 boop. You see it highlighted there? You've got to actually have 4 quotes or details from the readings. Remember, a quote means the exact words, not sort of the words, not kind of what you remember, but the exact words somebody said in the videos or the exact words somebody wrote in the articles. That means you've got to sometimes stop the video, rewind until you can get the exact words. A quote is like a sacred promise, all right, that you're making the reader that, hey, these are the exact words. And that's what makes it such a powerful piece of evidence in college writing, because you're saying, hey, look, these exact words by this expert, by this person who is sitting right there in the stands, these exact words support my point. Okay, and you see how it just wouldn't be that strong if you're like, well, this is kind of what somebody said. Okay, that sucks, okay? You got to say exactly what they say when you put it between quotation marks. These, by the way, are quotation marks, and when you put those in a paper, you are saying these are the exact words. I think I'm making sense, aren't I? When you do section 3, like I said, you got to get the exact words between quotation marks, but also critical. Boop, 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 boop. There I am highlighting it. Also critical is you got to say who said it or wrote it and where they said or wrote it. For example, I write here, a voice in the background of a video taken from the stands of the Phillies game. That says who said it, and it also says where it came from. Here's an example, and by the way, I made this quote up, so don't ever use this quote. I just use it for illustrative purposes. Quote, a taser has low amperage, and that's why it doesn't cause any real harm if people can feel it because of the voltage, but walk away unharmed because of the amps. And Don Cisco said that, and he's a police deputy speaking on an interview from CCBN News. I tell who said it and where they said it. It's also important that I say he's a police deputy because that establishes him as a bit of an expert, right? He should know about the taser since he's actually has it sitting there on his hip, right? Again, here's another quote. Steven shouldn't have run the field, but come on, he's not a threat. Even the players are laughing their behinds off. And I say, again, who said it? Danny Fargo for ESDN Sports. Okay, I made that quote up. Again, I'm just making stuff up for illustrative purposes, just to show you what I mean. And finally, here's a fourth quote. So again, for section 3, choose 4 quotes or details from any of the videos, any of the articles. Doesn't matter to me where they come from. Just choose 4 good ones you think are important to the topic we're discussing. Hey, having these quotes is going to help you because when it comes time to write the actual paper, you may actually end up using these quotes. All right, finally, section 4. Hey, this is cool. Section 4, just write me a question. Some interesting question that relates to the topic that occurred to you when you read the material for this particular journal. For example, this question reads, how would you feel if Stephen Consalvi were your son? Well, that's a good question. And the neat thing is, I get in a dialogue with you. I always write my answer to your questions. So, maybe that was really confusing. Let's show you what this all looks like when you put it together in a standard journal. And remember, make your journal look just like mine if you want full credit. Okay, again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the name of the student, Josh Ng in this case. You would put your name here. Tell which journal it is. This is Consalvi Journal 1. Tell the date you're writing it. Always give your journal a title. I gave my title here, The Weenie Boy. You'll see why in a second. All right, here's section 1. Remember, section 1 is where I've got to tell people, section 1 is where I'm trying to tell, let me try this all one more time. Okay, here's section 1, and remember section 1 is where I'm trying to convince the teacher that I at least looked at everything. If I want full credit for section 1, I got to mention each of the videos and articles I was asked to read. So I would write something like, for today's journal I watched 2 videos of Stephen Consalvi being tased. I want to tell a little bit about each video so I can convince the teacher I at least opened them up and looked at them. One video was from a news show and it had a short article with it that talked about how dumb Stephen was being. The second video was a shot by a fan using a cell phone. Finally, I read an article discussing how dangerous it can be to tase someone. Hey, that's nice. That just tells me that I at least looked at everything. That's section 1. Okay, section 2 is where I got to write that pies paragraph. And I'm going to put these in different colors so I can help you really see what we're doing. Remember, the P in pies is you got to make a point. So I'm going to put this in red. Here I make a point. And it's just, I watched this stuff and I read this stuff, and this is a point I thought I might like to make. Here it is. Consalvi looks like a harmless prankster who delights the crowd with his hilarious 2-minute run. That is a point. All right, once you make your point, then you have to insert some detail or something from the actual articles and videos you watched. I'll put this in blue. For example, Stephen is just running around with a towel pumping his fist. There's a detail. In a YouTube video of the tasing posted by a fan who was there, you can clearly see the first baseman laughing into his glove. And someone nearby in the stands even yells in the video, "Look, he's laughing into his glove." Like me, the crowd and players seem to look at Consalvi like a harmless prankster. Hey, that's a nice insert. And that's the I in pies. So far we've made our point. And we've inserted details to support that point. Okay, next comes the E. This is where you've got to explain. Well, give us something extra that will help explain how your details prove the point. And in this case, remember I gave you a bunch of different options like a simile, different things. In this case, I actually combined a couple things. First, I put a personal experience I connect to. Consalvi reminds me of my friend Bill Erickson, who walked across the graduation stage juggling 3 balls in the air. Was it out of place? Yeah, but the crowd loved it, just like the Philly fans loved Consalvi. Okay, that's a personal experience. Hey, let's put this explanation here in green. And we'll put that in bold. But I also tagged in here a little simile here, which is another nice way of explaining. Consalvi seems like the people in those little costumes stadiums have raced during the 7th inning stretch. See the picture. Hey, here's a little side note. I do allow you to use pictures when they relate to the point you're making. Well, the point I'm making here is, to me, Consalvi looks like kind of like these weenie people they have run around during the 7th inning stretch. Have you ever seen those at games? I have. The important thing, though, is if you use a picture, make sure you explain how that picture relates to the point you're making. All right, so don't just throw a picture in there and expect me to figure it out. So far in this pies paragraph, P, I've made my point. I, I've inserted specific details. E, I have explained the details further by connecting to a personal experience. I didn't have to do that. Remember, I could have connected to a story or outside example. I could have done a lot of things. And I created a simile. I said what it's like. Finally, the last part of the pies paragraph is to summarize. Summarize the main point of the paragraph again. And I'm going to put that in red. I'll explain why in a second. So I write, so I understand that security guards may have a right to view him as a threat, but to the rest of us, Consalvi was the highlight of the game. He was basically the weenie boy with no costume. All right? The reason I put that in red is your main point here in the pies paragraph should be the same as your summary point at the end, shouldn't it? A paragraph needs to be about one point. And if you get off that one point, it spoils the paragraph. It makes it too complicated. You've got to stick on one point. And that's why the point you make in your first sentence should be the same point you make in the summary sentence at the end. Doesn't have to be exact words. In fact, it's better if it's not, but it should be the same point. So do you see what a pies paragraph has to have? When you write your own pies paragraph, make sure you have some red, that you have a point. Make sure you have some blue, that you insert some details. Make sure you explain, make a simile, make a connection, do something. And make sure you summarize the main point at the end. That's a nice pies paragraph. Okay, look at the section 3. Again, it's got 4 separate quotes, and it always tells who said it and where they said it. That's very important because when you go to use this in a paper, you're going to have to tell the reader that. Nice, clear 4 quotes. Remember, 4 quotes actually go in quotation marks. All right? And they have to be the exact words. Don't be lazy. Stop that video, rewind it till you get the exact words and find out who said it and where they said it. You can also use details. You don't have to always have quotes. I could have put a detail like Consalvi never comes within 10 feet of any of the players. Well, that wouldn't have been a quote. It just would have been a detail I saw from the video. You can use details as well. It doesn't always have to be exact quotes. These just all happen to be exact quotes. Lastly, here's section 4. Again, that just has to be a question. I will answer your question when I grade your paper. I always write you little comments on what I thought about your question as well. So that's what it looks like. If you want full credit on these journals, make sure it looks just like mine. Make sure it has a title. Make sure it has all 4 sections. Pay close attention to that pious paragraph. Make sure it has the 4 quotes for section 3. And finally, an interesting question. Hey, at the end of this handout, which you'll find on content, because I always post all your handouts there, is a check sheet for your journal. Does the journal contain all 4 required sections? Well, if you only got 3 sections, you're going to get points off. Does the journal follow the exact format of my example journal? Make it look just like mine. Doot, 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 doot. See it flashing up there? Make it look just like mine. Have a proper heading. Bold fonts for the sections. Type it. Double space everything. Do you mention all the videos and the articles in section 1? A lot of times people lose points when they don't. Do you have PIES, all 4 things in your pious paragraph? Point, insert, explain, summary. Did you proofread to the best of your ability section 2? A lot of times people will just write their pious paragraph really quickly, and they won't even realize that they started on one point and ended on a completely different point. So proofread your own stuff. Try to catch even grammar, punctuation errors. Do your quotes, are your quotes the exact words in section 3? Do you tell who says or writes the quote and where they say or write it in section 3? And finally, don't forget that question in section 4. So I hope today you know how to write a standard journal. Again, try to make it look just like mine. Sometimes it takes people a few journals before they start getting the grade that they want in these. That's okay. You're not going to die. Just do your best job and keep